good morning, time to go. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for adventure. We are all.
Welcome back to the 3x5 Life podcast. On this podcast, we talk about wellness, well-being, self-care, productivity, time management, all the things. And last week, we focused our attention on energy as currency. And so maybe you had time last week to reflect during your normal day-to-day activities and really look at that idea and that visualization of, is this energy giving? Is this energy taking? What type of energy am I bringing to a situation? All of those pieces that can be really important with our interactions and our relationships. So this week, I'm switching gears a little bit. If you can tell, Bryan is not with me. He is actually on an adventure in Colorado. He is hiking and backpacking with a group of guys. He's doing a 14er. So 14,000 foot mountain over several days, but camping in between. And so he is out on an adventure in nature. But I thought that in reflection to that, and also I've had a little bit of reflection time for myself, I wanted to focus this podcast on a topic about nature and being outside. So I guess you could call it like things I learned at nature camp, if you wanted to give it a title. And when I say that, it's because I literally just finished 2 weeks ago running a summer camp, a nature-based summer camp for the first time ever at a preserve locally. It's called Cheslin Preserve. And it was all outside and it was for ages 4 through 9. And we had 41 kiddos. So my friend Kate and I, this was our first rodeo with this. And I was a middle school science teacher for years and years, but little ones, although I have my own that are this age, having 41 of them was a total learning experience for me. But it was a beautiful experience, but it was a lot, right? So I thought I would just kind of like unpack it with you and talk about some things that I noticed, some things that I learned, and then maybe connect it to our relationship with nature and how our families can thrive when we do so, have a better connection with nature. If you know us, obviously, one of the reasons why I decided to homeschool and join our co-op that we did is we actually do our co-op and our classroom space out of a place called Tyler Arboretum, which is like a beautiful nature center that has streams and, we have a pond and we have a growing garden and a butterfly garden and tree houses and things for the kids to explore. And so it is really important for me that our kids explore outside as much as we possibly can. And I think my kids are really used to that type of like unstructured play and like getting dirty and muddy. And it was very interesting for me to notice that a lot of kids who came to our camp, I think this might have been one of their first experiences with the idea of just unstructured exploration. And I know this because one of the requirements that my friend Kate and I asked parents to bring was a new set of water shoes, or not a new set. We just said, bring water shoes. And for me, I have our kids have water shoes. They're totally smelly and gross and muddy. But I noticed that a lot of the water shoes that the kids brought were brand new, like they'd never been worn before. And so I was very excited, one, because I felt really honored that I got to introduce them to creek stomping for the very first time. But two, it made me think about how maybe we don't play in nature as much as we should with our families and our kids. But what I did notice is when they did put on those water shoes and they like walked up to the stream, we were doing a macroinvertebrate study. So we were looking for like mayflies and dragonflies and crayfish and all the critters that live in our streams. And they were very hesitant to even like put their feet in the water. And they kept looking at me like, is this allowed? Is this allowed? And I kept encouraging them, yes, absolutely. And so they would put their toe in for the first time and they'd look up at me and then they'd like jump into the water and it would splash. And I just like saw this elation and sense of happiness in their face. And it made me so grateful, one, that we have beautiful spaces that our kids can explore, and two, that I got to experience that with them. But just so we can kind of zoom out, the benefits of being outside in nature, I almost like getting out of the way. As a teacher, I tend to overplan. I always have activities in my back pockets. Like I struggle with just not being structured at certain times. But I feel like nature gives us permission to do just that. One of my favorite activities for the week at camp was I had them collect sticks and I taught them how to build like mini structures. So like finding a Y-shaped stick and a Y-shaped stick and putting a stick across and then lining up other sticks and then using like moss and grass to make it so that it's waterproof. I mean, I thought this activity would maybe take them 15 minutes, and we literally were down there and they were just like exploring and working on it for about 3 hours, and then wanted to go back the next day of camp to check on their structures. And the creativity and the innovation and just like the things that they created from it. Like they would create fences using, pine cones, or they created a moss bed for their fairy that would then inhabit their structure. And I was doing nothing but just like observing and standing back and watching. And I felt like what a beautiful lesson of almost what it should be, right? Like instead of always thinking us from the lens of being a teacher, like what if we thought about it from the lens of just being a guide, like giving them the idea, but then allowing them to like run with it. And I find this with hiking too. When you're hiking with your kids, a lot of times we're trying to hike to an outlook, like we're just like on a mission to get there. And the times where I don't have an end game in mind, I'm not like going towards a destination. Those hikes have been some of my absolute favorite, because the kids will turn over a rock and they'll find a new insect that they want to explore. Or, our kids are really into foraging right now. We actually had an expert forager come to camp one day and taught us all about like edible plants and berries and roots that we can use. We found some wild ginger. They were eating so all these different types of like roots that they found, and berries that they were allowed to eat, like the wine berries. So we had to make sure that we told everybody that they are not allowed to eat anything unless there is a master forager with her. But like that idea of just like foraging and picking and exploring is really, really cool. So zooming out, I just wanted to talk about some of these benefits, because I think that not only are they great for our kids, but they're also great for us. So when we're outside, it's, that there is this beauty of immediately starting our day with being outside in nature. When the sun hits our face, it is the number one way to reduce cortisol and stress in our bodies. And so if you can start your day by just going for a walk, or even just like walking outside and letting the sun touch your face, your cortisol levels reduce and they stay like that for the rest of the day. And our cortisol levels are actually most heightened in the morning. So if you can do this as a morning practice, it has like tons of benefits for you. It boosts our natural immunity. I remember listening to a podcast with Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, and he was talking about how there are geometric patterns that are found in leaves and bark and grasses that are only found in nature, that can't be replicated anywhere else. And the way that this geometry is created, it immediately calms us and calms our bodies. And there's something like that with water too. Like water has specific light fractals that do the same thing. They have a calming nature. So I tell you this for yourself, but I also tell you this, that if you ever find yourself where your kids are stir crazy, or not even stir crazy, they're just like at each other's throat and like not getting along, and you're constantly redirecting them, or they're just having a hard time figuring out what to do, I have never, ever regretted pulling my kids up and taking them outside. And a lot of times, like going to a local creek or going to a local hiking spot, or just, even our backyard, just going to explore in our backyard. Every single time I do it, it gets everybody out of the funk. It gets me out of the funk. It gets them out of the funk. And I've never, ever regretted it. The fresh air is so good for like our digestion. It helps with our liver function so that we can break down toxins. There's all this research that supports even just like looking at a natural scene. It activates parts of your brain that's associated with balance and happiness. Outdoor kids who are outdoors a lot are more likely to use their own imagination, their inventions, their creativity, and they do this type of play that can't be replicated in any other environment. And so I challenge you this week to think about, are there places locally? There's tons of like apps and resources, but one of the ones that I love is Natural Lands. So Natural Lands has an app that you can literally put in your location. It will show you all the natural preserves that are around you. Preserves are an awesome place to start because trails are well marked. You have usually some type of like stream or like clubhouse or area that you can go, like an education type center. So that's an awesome place to start. But just maybe this weekend, or when you get home from work one day, or if there's, some space in your weekday, to just get yourself or your family or any person that you want to like kind of connect with or just be with, get outside and just bask in those unstructured, unfiltered, life-giving energy that comes from just being in nature. So anyway, this was on my mind. It was something that I had the ability to reflect on after we got home from that crazy week of camp. And I just felt like it's an invitation for you. If you haven't checked out 1,000 Hours Outside, I strongly suggest doing so. And then just trying to create more opportunities for you to get everybody out and moving. So I hope you have a great week. Try to get outside if you can, and I'll see you next time.
Oh,